describing an underwater UFO as large as a football field, moving at hundreds of miles per hour underwater.
Have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it.
The United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology.
We are not all to be traced back to one blob of germplasm.
And the implant is finally removed.
There's no evidence how the object got inside the body.
Can you comment on the drones?
Our military knows where they took off from. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
What's good, people? Good to see you. Good morning. Well, whenever you're watching the video, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Good to see you, man. Good to see you, woman. How are you all doing? Hope you have a good day so far. Well, we're just gonna dive into the second part of Jason Somoza's documentary. Well, I don't know if I want to call it documentary, but series of elaborating on basically everything that is going on since World War II and a little bit before, surrounding this whole UFO topic. In case you missed it and you haven't seen the first part, go watch it. Either on his channel or on my channel. Well, I wanna talk about something quick because I just got a comment on that I'm being a parasite by watching work of others. And in a way, I do get the point. It's not that I want to, not like rage about it or anything or like cry or something, right? But it is just something to make clear. You can make of that whatever you want. But for me here in this space that I'm creating, it's not about like using the work of others to get a piece of the cake, because I feel like I'm not watching like just for the sake of views, because I'm not looking for the most viral things trending right now, not making like viral clips and all that kind of stuff. For me, it's really about sharing in a way of if you are working on something like Jason Somoza now, and he's bringing that video up on YouTube. It is there for the public to watch, right? So, as you are watching maybe my video now, and if I feel like I want to decide to watch that video on the live stream, and maybe someone else is watching the live stream, and he didn't even know about Jason Somoza, what I'm doing with this is basically bringing Jason Somoza to his attention or to the attention of the viewer, which maybe will lead the viewer or bring him to the point that he thinks like, wow, this dude did an insane job of putting a video together, so I'm gonna be a Patreon and support Jason Somoza's work. So what I did with that is actually supporting Jason Somoza in a way. And maybe he likes some takes of what I'm saying to that, right? And maybe I get a subscription every now and then, of course, but that's not about it, man. It's about, dude, what we're talking about is much bigger than me, man. It is much bigger than me, so I don't give a damn about that. It's not that I'm being like rich or anything. So it's really about the value and what those people are talking about in the video. It's not just some crazy random UFO bullshit. It doesn't really matter video. Dude, what he's talking about is insanely important, right? And some videos are more important, some are less, you could say, in terms of value and, but this is insanely important. So, man, if you're still stuck in this thinking of, oh, you just try to get a piece of the cake, do your own work and shit like that, I think you gotta continue, man. Because I feel like at this point, at the moment, I know I'm really bad at bringing a video together, but I actually decided to, because I'm still working full-time next to doing this YouTube channel, so it's not as easy to work every day, get up in the morning every day, come back home, doing sports, doing what you gotta do, man, and do like 2 videos a week at least, you know, one video and 1 live stream with value. We all got a life, man. Things are getting more expensive, so this world is pretty fucked up at the moment, so we all gotta see where we put our time into, right? Or what we put our time into. So it's not too easy, man. So I decided to actually do less of those videos just for the sake of doing a video. I rather work on a long project for a longer video, bring a lot of value into the video, and then release it maybe every couple of weeks. Whatever, man. I don't really care anymore. And during that time, I'm going to do live streams. And also, of course, I'm going to do more live streams where I'm just researching on my own and not just watch videos of others. But I try to really watch videos where I feel like, man, you will like them too. And also videos that maybe haven't been seen before that much. Because, man, Jason Somoza on his channel, he got way too little views for the video he's doing. With this, like, he deserves millions of views, man. So, with that being said, I hope you go to follow Jason Somoza's channel, follow his Patreon, be a Patreon and support him. Follow his X channel, follow everything he got, you know. And of course, if you want, and you feel like supporting me as well, I would appreciate a subscription from you as well. And, you know, I definitely appreciate your time that you spent here on the channel, man. So with that being said, I love every single one of you, even if you hate me, even if you think I'm a parasite, man. Kiss on your cheek. Right, so with that being said, let's jump into the video. Alright, not much to add anymore. I think we're just gonna hop into it. It's gonna be a banger, man, because now it's gonna get deep. I mean, the first part has been deep already. But it's gonna be even deeper, you know. Thank you, Clippo. Love you too.
Welcome, it's me, Jason Somoza, and I'm thrilled to have you here for part 2 on our series about the Collins Elite, a mysterious group from deep inside of the Pentagon who began to propagate the theory that the UFO phenomenon may in fact be demonic in origin. In part 2, we are not simply going to trace how this theory spread through the defense and intelligence community and had a huge influence on the policy around UFOs that we've seen ever since World War II. It's far bigger than just that. You are going to see the entire religious takeover of the United States military and intelligence apparatus, and the various religious groups who propagated that idea into the highest echelons of power, ensuring that the truth about non-human intelligence and UFOs was suppressed right from the Nixon administration into Carter, Reagan, and all the way up to the modern Trump presidency, giving us all the context we need to answer the question, is Trump really about to disclose the truth? Or is he going to work with these powers to force our understanding of this sophisticated UFO phenomenon through a religious lens? Finally, we'll culminate on rumors of a terrifying plan to stage the fulfillment of biblical prophecy and even the return of Jesus Christ. Don't believe me? Well, sit down, make yourself comfortable. This is going to blow your mind.
I do think so, bro. You basically blew my mind like 5 times. Not 5 times, 50 times in one video. I actually bought, I think I ordered like maybe 6 books from Joseph Farrell. So I'm gonna jump into those books like, you know, I'm gonna dive into them because that shit is crazy. I wonder if they get like censored in any way, because I feel like the value in those books is insane.
Before we continue, a quick word from the sponsor of today's university. You name it on the number of all important. It's no/Jason Samosa. You'll be able to get 83% off plus a day. Don't for support. Let's get back.
Okay.
I want to start today by dealing with some of the prevalent theories that people have about the Collins elite. Sometimes you'll hear stories of individuals who may be trying to study this phenomenon inside of the defense and intelligence community who end up getting dressed down by seniors who tell them they can't study this because it's demonic. Perhaps you're familiar with the story of Lou Elizondo during the ATIP or SAP era. He was walking through the halls of the Pentagon when he came across an individual that he identifies as Devon Woods, a senior DIA official, who asks Lou, "Have you been reading your Bible recently?" In his book Imminent, he details the conversation. "Have you read your Bible lately, Lou?" he asked. Sir, I'm familiar with the Bible," I said. What a strange thing to ask, I thought. "Lou, you're opening up a can of worms with this stuff," Woods said. It was clear to me he was talking about UAP. I can't imagine the look on my face, but I'm sure Woods could tell I was perplexed. "It's demonic," he said to me. "There is no reason we should be looking into this. We already know what they are and where they came from. They are deceivers, demons." I think it's a reasonable theory to suggest this might have been David Shedd, then Deputy Director of the DIA, who would later go on to become Director of the DIA. It's public record that he is a devout Christian. So here's a question. Is David Shedd a member of the Collins elite? Well, whilst you're pondering that, let me give you another example of an individual trying to study the phenomenon only to get a dressing down from a senior intelligence official citing biblical theology. In 1987, Colonel John Alexander was addressing a panel led by Walter LeBerge, a highly senior individual from the defense and intelligence community. LeBerge was a PhD in physics, Assistant Secretary for the Air Force under Nixon, Assistant Secretary General of NATO, Under Secretary for the Army during the Carter administration, and a Vice President for Lockheed Martin in the 80s. He was a highly connected intelligence actor. And at this panel, Alexander would be sharing his findings regarding anomalous phenomena. At the end of his presentation, LeBerge reportedly exploded and screamed at Alexander, "You're not supposed to know that. That's what you learn when you die." Understandably, Alexander hot-tailed it out of there. Now, to come back to my question about David Shedd, let's add Walter LeBerge to the list as well. Who are these people? Are they part of the Collins elite? And I want to put it to you that doesn't really make much sense. If you remember in episode 1, we documented how the Collins elite was founded in 1952 as a highly sensitive program. It had a budget and it had a limited staff, and it was funded through the CIA's Directorate of Plans, which indicates that it was highly sensitive and would likely in today's parlance be known as a special access program. Now, if that's the case, how many people can you realistically have in that program? Is every single powerful intelligence operative who has a Christian worldview going to be brought into that SAP? It doesn't really make any sense. That program has a limited number of staff and a limited budget, and it's highly sensitive. So what is it that we're looking at? What is this broad community of people throughout politics and intelligence who share this worldview and proactively suppress any attempt to investigate the phenomenon? Well, to answer that question, we need to look into another organization, often known as the Family and sometimes called the Fellowship. And once we begin to tell their story, I think you're going to have an entirely new perspective on quite how big and influential the Collins elite really are.
Man, and this is what I mean. It's like, shut the up, man. Like, listen to what he's saying, dude. This is stuff that you never hear, really. Like, did you ever hear anyone talk about all that guy? Like, all of those guys, like the Family and the Collins elite. I don't know. It's not that widespread. Most people just know about Llewellyn Zondon, Tom DeLonge, maybe, you know, all that kind of things. Like, but like those insights that are mostly like hidden from the most eyes of the public is man. Again, support Jason Somoza, bro.
In 1935, a Norwegian immigrant and Methodist minister named Abraham Vereide created an organization called The Family. To the innocent eye, The Family was simply a prayer meetup for Christians, but Vereide's goal was not prayer or spiritual transformation. He was seeking power and influence over the nation's politics. In a 1942 pamphlet, he would write, "An epochal opportunity is ours to control the future of America by the simple strategy of controlling the character and ideals of a relatively small minority of college-aged men and women." Hitler long ago perceived this strategy and established his elaborate system of leadership training. The democracies have been asleep. By 1942, the US was at war with Nazi Germany. Hitler's war crimes were well documented and understood in the United States. The execution of civilians, the mass deportation of Jews, all of it was known, but as we're going to see, this strange reference to Hitler was going to be a fixture not simply for Vereide, but also for others in the family. By the late 1930s and 40s, Vereide began organizing gatherings for members of Congress and business leaders in Washington. After World War II, the movement gained momentum. It found an important ally in President Dwight Eisenhower. Key family members convinced Eisenhower to attend the first presidential prayer breakfast, and it would lead to profound results. In his book, The Family, The Secret Fundamentalism at the Heart of American Power, Jeff Charlotte notes how the influence of the family, also occasionally known as the ICL, by the way, International Christian Leadership, would begin to change the very essence of what it meant for America to be a republic. He writes, "In 1954, Under God was added to the Pledge of Allegiance, an initiative sponsored in the Senate by Homer Ferguson, a Republican ICL board member, and financed by ICLer Clement Stone. And In God We Trust was added to the nation's currency by a bill sponsored by a Dixiecrat congressman named Charles E. Bennett, also a member of the family's inner circle." It might be argued that this was Vereide's single biggest achievement in all of his work. Or you may also argue that it was the fact that every single president after Eisenhower would attend one of these prayer breakfasts. Whichever one of those options you go for, the impact is pretty significant. And even when Vereide would die in 1969 and his protege, Doug Coe, would take over, their quest for power would only intensify. Just like Vereide before him, Coe didn't have much interest in spreading the gospel. The focus was on power. In his book, Jeff Charlotte recounts some of the things that Coe was known to have said. "We're not here to preach the gospel. We're here to build relationships with people in power." He also said, "Jesus didn't come to take sides. He came to take over." And once again, we find a bizarre and disturbing reverence for Adolf Hitler. This time, after the war, there are no excuses for not understanding who this man was and what he was really about. Jesus said, "You have to put me before other people, and you have to put me before yourself." Hitler said the same thing to the German people. Not only did Coe, like Vereide before him, have a strange fascination with Hitler, but he would also cite other war criminals as examples of the loyalty that he would like to inspire in his group. He would reference Lenin, Mao, Ho Chi Minh, and Bin Laden as examples to look up to. He would even tell his followers to look at the mafia as an example of the kind of network that they would create. He would state, "Everything invisible is permanent and lasts forever. The more you can make your organization invisible, the more influence it will have." This is highly telling and is critical for us to understand how this organization operated. Ultimately, Coe wasn't interested in democracy, oversight, and accountability. He wanted, like Variety before him, to create an invisible network that could infiltrate the highest levels of power to spread ideas. So, how big was this network of power? Well, according to some estimates, the family has about 20,000 committed members around the world, but importantly for our purposes are the several hundred members who are rumored to occupy the highest levels of power across the United States government and the defense and intelligence community. Key members of this network include powerful senators like James Lankford, Mark Hatfield, and Ted Cruz, some of whom have had significant positions on the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence. It also includes powerful presidential advisors like Charles Colson, Alonzo McDonald, and James Baker. Other members include the wife of former NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, even Vice President Mike Pence. There are former Secretaries of Defense, 3 chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Attorney Generals, Chief Justices, and even the former CEO of Raytheon. This network had people spread invisibly throughout the defense, intelligence, and political establishments, fulfilling Coe's vision of an invisible mafia. And for what purpose? Well, this might be a good moment for us to jump back to the theme of our conversation, the Collins elite, and to focus on one key, highly influential member of the family, President Carter's staff director, Alonzo McDonald. And I wonder if some of you might recognize that name because it was recently brought up in a fascinating interview that Jesse Michaels held with Eric Davis and Eric Weinstein. In that conversation, Eric Davis would reveal a conversation that he had with Alonzo McDonald. Here it is.
What happened when Jimmy Carter got briefed?
I don't know what the aftermath is, but I know that Alonzo McDonald confirmed to several of us that in our group during that era, he talked to the staff that attended that briefing. He talked to Carter, and it happened.
Do you know anything that transpired in the meeting itself as far as...
Well, he talked to Carter and he asked him what transpired. Carter told him and the guys who attended told him. And they said, we learned that the United States government has been in contact with aliens, UFO beings.
This is an absolutely critical data point because it shows us that individuals from the family network received UFO briefings. And Alonzo McDonald wouldn't be the last one. Now, you might be asking yourself, Jason, again, what has this got to do with the Collins elite? Well, this is where we need to jump into Dr. Vallet's most recent journals, where he has something very interesting to say about Alonzo McDonald. Here's Valet. The last substantive discussion had to do with the Collins elite, the secret group of religious fundamentalists who keep blocking UFO information because they suspect a satanic origin and nature to the data. We know there's a cabal. It has tried to recruit people since the 1970s. One was Alonzo McDonald, White House staff director for President Jimmy Carter, linked to the Episcopalian Church, who attended breakfast prayer meetings. Topics about demons would come up, and about people possessed. Here we can see the connection. For Dr. Valet, Alonzo McDonald may as well be part of the Collins elite. But there is simply no way Alonzo McDonald was actually part of the program, and I could be wrong about that. But the odds of a staff director for the Carter administration actually being involved in a special access program examining the occult and demonic links with the UFO phenomenon strikes me as highly unusual. Instead, it seems as though individuals like Valet will sometimes use the phrase Collins elite as a catch-all phrase for multiple different groups and networks who sometimes work together to suppress the complex truth about UFOs. Now, I know at this point you may be thinking to yourself, well, look, Jason, that's one data point that's very interesting, but how can you legitimately say that this family network truly has a role to play in UFO secrecy? Well, let's move on to the Reagan administration.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
You see, the Democrats lost power when Carter went out of office. The Republicans came in. But interestingly, one group didn't experience much change at all, and that was the family network. In the Carter administration, like we said, Alonzo McDonald was the staff director, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was another family member, David C. Jones. When Reagan came in, he would appoint his own staff director, James Baker, and his own chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General John William Vesey. Both were also members of the family. In 1985, Reagan would be asked about the family and its influence in politics, and he would make a rather cryptic response. Reagan would state, "I wish I could say more about it, but it's working precisely because it's private." The persistence of the family into the Reagan administration is absolutely astonishing. But what is completely mind-blowing is that another family member was about to sit in on a presidential briefing on UFOs. This time, Reagan's chief of staff, James Baker, was about to be intimately acquainted on the truth about the UFO phenomenon. In 1974, then Governor of California, Ronald Reagan, was flying towards Bakersfield on a small private jet. Out of the window, he, his pilot, and 2 security staff would see a UFO. His pilot, Bill Painter, would later recall, "It appeared to be several hundred yards away. It was a fairly steady light until it began to accelerate. Then it appeared to elongate. Then the light took off. It went up at a 45-degree angle at a high rate of speed. Everyone on the plane was surprised. The UFO went from a normal cruise speed to a fantastic speed instantly. If you give an aeroplane power, it will accelerate, but not like a hot rod. And that's what this was like." Reagan would later expand on the sighting when speaking to a Wall Street Journal reporter. "We followed it for several minutes. It was a bright white light. We followed it to Bakersfield, and all of a sudden, to our utter amazement, it went straight up into the heavens." When Miller expressed some doubts, a look of horror came over Reagan. It suddenly dawned on him that he was talking to a reporter. Immediately afterward, according to Miller, Reagan clammed up. Reagan never discussed the incident again. Now, do we have any idea about how Reagan might have interpreted what he saw? Well, actually, yes, we do. Because Reagan wasn't just an individual who'd seen a UFO, he was a highly devout evangelical Christian with an extremely apocalyptic worldview. In fact, there's evidence to suggest that Reagan believed during his lifetime that we were in the end times. In a phone call with an AIPAC lobbyist, Reagan would reveal that he believed the end was imminent. He would state, "You know, I turn back to your ancient prophets in the Old Testament and the signs foretelling Armageddon, and I find myself wondering if we're the generation that's going to see that come about. I don't know if you've noted any of those prophecies lately, but believe me, they certainly describe the times we're going through." And this isn't an isolated sentiment. Even back in 1971, years before his UFO sighting, Reagan stated that everything is in place for the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Christ. For the Collins elite, there couldn't have been a more appropriate individual to enter the White House. A man who'd seen a UFO but decided to keep quiet about it, and also believed that the end times were upon us. Obviously, it wouldn't take much for them to convince him of their theory. And in 1982, they would get their chance. Reagan was about to have a UFO briefing, and of all people, the Collins elite were going to be the ones to give it.
Well, what a coincidence. That's so interesting, bro.
When Nicholas Redfern sought to investigate the Collins elite and their history, he would make contact with a lot of individuals who had previously been connected to the group. One of those was an individual called Dr. Mandor. In the book Final Events, Dr. Mandor would relay to Redfern the astonishing story of how Reagan requested a UFO briefing, and how of all groups, the Collins elite were there to attend and to share their ideas. Dr. Mandor informed me that Reagan had a personal UFO encounter in 1974, and that this experience, along with his subsequent interest in the phenomenon and a classified briefing on UFOs he received from the National Security Council the day after viewing ET, led the White House to conducting a secret study in 1982 into the national security implications of the alleged large-scale kidnapping of American citizens by forces unknown, alien abductions, in other words. Mandor said that several authorities were apparently tasked with preparing detailed reports for Reagan, for Chief of Staff James Baker, and for Deputy Chief of Staff Michael K. Deaver, the three of whom were collectively known in official circles as the Troika, a Russian word meaning threesome. Very quickly, I just need to make sure we draw attention to the individual who was just named after Reagan, James Baker. James Baker is a member of the family, okay? And he's about to sit in on a UFO briefing. Back to Redfern. One of those authorities was the Collins elite, which submitted an extensive paper that detailed for Reagan and his staff the whole demonic fallen angel theory and the way in which they had been surreptitiously looking at the subject for some years. They warned of the importance of not being seduced by the satanic deception. Personnel attached to the CIA's Science and Technology Division delivered a second report to Reagan. This report outlined all available data in favor of some form of vast extraterrestrial operation with a genetic agenda at its heart. The third report was prepared by an Air Force psychologist who argued that alien abductions were purely the work of the human subconscious and sleep disorders, as well as issues related to cultural beliefs and folklore. According to Dr. Mandor, the one theory that fascinated Reagan most was what the Collins elite had presented, probably because of Reagan's fascination with end times belief systems and ideologies. Such doomsday beliefs proliferated in Reagan's White House. James Baker was the second family member that we know of to sit in on a presidential UFO briefing. At this point, I think it's fair to say that some of the most senior levels of the family network are aware of the UFO phenomenon and now also would have all the details they would need to understand the Collins elite theory about a vast demonic deception. Dr. Mandor would tell Redfern that Reagan liked the Collins elite theory so much that he would go on to secure extra black budget funding for their work.
Dude. Just in case you didn't know, this is incredible research. Man, I have to read all those books, bro. Oh, I'm gonna need quite some money, man, and some time to do all of that. But this is insane. It is so insane to see the real influence of groups actually really believing into this, let's say, into this version of this could be the origin of UFOs, or this could be tied to UFO phenomenon and where it's coming from, and seeing that those guys are actually, yeah, pretty much funding those Blake projects, right? Which is so interesting because we do know that they work on this technology too. So in a way, they got this technology to a certain extent. And I'm wondering if they are, you know, really thinking that this is like a demonic thing. Because in a way you could say then we are using satanic technology, you know? Like if all of this is just satanic, why do we use that technology though? Just because it's advanced? Or, and I'm wondering too, like, because we have seen these Nazi influences, right? Like Nazi influences from Hitler and stuff. And I'm wondering if it's still the same people. Still the same people, you know, kind of like also following this narrative. Because I feel like it's like, I don't know if it is. Do you know if it is? Did they also believe, like all these Nazis, that all of this is just demonic? I mean, weren't there these blonde women that Hitler was talking to? They were saying that they were channeling and also giving them technology and stuff. That he had these mediums, you know, those two. I think it was like two blonde women or something that he had that were, yeah, basically channeling extraterrestrials. I don't know, man. It's so weird. All of this, it's so big. And what I'm always asking myself while watching all of this, like the last videos recently showing up this huge network of Nazi influence in the whole system, like how they moved to the US. But we do know that there's like, let's say, a big part of a country starting with an I, let's say, and ends with Rael. They also do have quite an influence. So I'm wondering, where is this connecting? You know, like, where is this connecting? Where is it ending? Or are they pretty much all of the same and it's just giving us the appearance? Because in terms of having the Nazi network, and then you would have like kind of, let's say, like a Jewish network, which is not that easy to connect, if you know what I mean. I'm wondering where all of this is connected though. Oh man, all of this is so big, as you can tell. Incredible.
And I want you to think about this. The Collins elite was already influential enough to be brought into this briefing. If you read Redfern's book as well, you will be struck by the sheer volume of data that the Collins elite was accruing from different agencies. They would be sent data from other agencies in the United States outside of the CIA, but also from intelligence agencies in countries like the UK. The Collins elite was getting vast amounts of data sent to them, showing their status and influence, and even had access to one of the reverse engineering programs, Zodiac, run by TRW. Now, we're going to get into that a bit later in the video, so I'm not going to spoil the details, but I just want to point out that the Collins elite had a huge amount of influence already prior to entering Reagan's White House. But now in the 80s, they're about to secure more funding. And even beyond the actual program, the family network was getting access to information as well. The power of this belief system was surging in the 80s in the Reagan administration. And we need to bear that in mind when we ask ourselves what it's up to today. Here is Vallée in his most recent journals once again. The various threads of messages among the Lone Stars have taken a strange turn. The roots of the Collins elite started in the 70s and originated at Fordham. An examination of that university's trustees from the late 60s gives an interesting mix. Many linked to senior intelligence officers, including some 4-stars, CIA directors, and Ambassador Alonzo McDonald. This entry puzzled me for ages. I had no idea what to make of it, because we already have two different versions of the Collins elite that we've looked at. One is the program, which started in 1952. The other is the family network, which started in 1935. And now Vallée is referring to a Catholic university and claiming that the Collins elite started there in the 70s. What does this mean? Well, as we're going to see, this is a third strand of influence, and frankly, maybe the most impactful of them all.
And this is what I mean with it's all so big and pretty complex, bro. Goddamn.
And to understand this, we need to go on a pretty long detour to understand the Catholic Church, their perspective on the UFO phenomenon, and how their influence has built momentum in the post-war United States. I want to be straightforward with you here. This detour is going to be pretty long, but I ask you to be patient and to stay with me. The story will be fascinating, but it will at points feel as though we may have lost connection to the story that we were just telling. But I promise you, we are going to come back to the Reagan administration, and we are going to come back with serious context, which I think is going to blow your mind. So be patient with me, enjoy this detour, and soon we'll be back in the Reagan White House.
Give me 1 second, Mr. Samosa. I gotta go for a little wee-wee, and I'll be back in a minute. So you excuse me. Okay, let's go.
The Catholic Church is vast.
It is.
1.4 billion Catholics populate nearly every country on Earth, making it one of the longest surviving institutions in human history. But how do you get an institution like this to last for so long?
Well,
you resist change. And that is something that the papacy became extremely adept at. The church did a formidable job at crushing dissent, suppressing rival theological movements, and ensuring that the status quo was maintained at all costs across millennia. But it wouldn't last forever. In the 1500s, revolutions started, and this time they were too powerful to be restrained. First, the Reformation and the Copernican Revolution in the 1500s, and then the Enlightenment in the 1600s and 1700s. The church would fight to suppress them, but would begin losing power. Ultimately, they couldn't completely stop what was happening, and the real substance of it was only just beginning. The Enlightenment philosophers were presenting compelling arguments that reason, science, and individual liberty were key for human progress, whereas absolute monarchy, religious authority, and inherited hierarchy were holding humanity back. These kinds of ideas can't simply be intellectualized. Ultimately, they have to have an impact on how society functions right up to the level of government. That's where the French and American revolutions would come in. First, in 1775, the American Revolution would begin. A decade later, the US Constitution was written. The Founding Fathers created an entirely new model of society. It was to be a republic, a country where the authority came from the people, not the monarch or the church. Free-thinking individuals could debate ideas and truly decide their own destiny without having to rely on external authorities who ultimately only cared for themselves. Now, there are lots of things about the founding of America that still weren't perfect, but in terms of a quantum leap forwards, it was astonishing. The Founding Fathers were creating an environment where the best ideas could win. They would create institutions like the Academy of Sciences and Arts, think tanks, and environments where free-thinking people could debate, discuss, and generate new models and new ideas that could hopefully move society and governance forwards and spur on the evolution of human society. Whilst this idealism was being born, across the Atlantic in Europe, the French Revolution was roaring, directly threatening not only the Vatican, but but also the monarchies. All parties would ban Freemasonry lodges across Europe due to fears that the lodges were becoming hotspots for Enlightenment thinking and revolutionary planning. But despite their efforts, the Napoleonic Revolution began and nearly wiped them off of the map. The Pope was imprisoned, and the legendary Knights of Malta lost Malta. This was a near total defeat for the old powers and the old ways of governing society. But somehow they clung on and managed to exile Napoleon, keeping hold of their power and getting a second chance. Following the defeat of Napoleon, all of these old powers would meet together at the Congress of Vienna in 1812 and vow, despite their former rivalries, to work together to suppress any hint of revolution in Europe moving forward. From this moment on, the Western world was split into two totally diametrically opposed forms of government. Over on the American continent, you had the emergence of the American Republic, a world where free thinking was encouraged and where a continuous evolution and progression of society was dreamed of. Over in Europe, you had the old powers of the monarchy, the Vatican, and the Knights of Malta conspiring together to try and suppress any revolution which might change the status quo. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Jason, why are you giving me a history lesson on European power? But it is so important for us to understand how an institution like the Catholic Church may view strange phenomena and the complicated truth about non-human intelligences. You see, if these old powers, like the Vatican, like the monarchies, like the Knights of Malta, were resistant to revolutions that could threaten their power geopolitically in Europe, what about the ultimate revolution? The revelation of non-human intelligences. Information so profound that it would shake our very institutions of governance and religion right to their core. Is it any surprise that their response to this information may be to view it as just another revolution to be pushed off in order to maintain the old forms of power? And all the information we have about the Catholic Church's response to strange phenomena and non-human intelligences totally reinforces this picture. In the late 1400s, many strange phenomena would emerge in Catholic Europe, including one described as the witches' Sabbat. Women, and sometimes men, would be taken from their beds, flown through the air to a desolate location where they would see humans and demons. Once there, a demon would perform sexual acts with them before they would be returned to their beds. This has all the complexities of the modern UFO abduction phenomenon just back in the 1400s. But for the Inquisition, those who experienced this were witches who were enabling demonic activity. So, the witches were killed. And the complexities of their experiences were suppressed. But in some cases, labeling the phenomena as demonic simply wouldn't do. In the 1600s, a devout monk, known as Joseph of Cupertino, would begin levitating. A volume of sworn testimony claims that he would frequently take off from the ground and begin floating through the air. Something remarkable was going on here based on all the testimony that we have, and presumably may have been correlated with his intense piety and his ceaseless praying and fasting. But the church wasn't interested in investigating that. Instead, they seized him and kept him under house arrest for the rest of his life. And then there's the case of Fatima. In 1917, 3 children would begin to see apparitions of a strange lady. After meeting with her many times, she would tell them that there was going to be a miracle performed on the 17th of October, 1917. And based on all the rumors swirling around these children and the apparitions they were claiming to have, an unbelievable crowd would show up on that day. 70,000 people, as reported in the newspapers of the time. These individuals would wait for a long time for the miracles to occur, but just as they were giving up, suddenly the clouds parted, and, according to the testimony that we have, witnesses saw a silvery disc hovering in the sky. The disc flew, spun, danced, and zigzagged through the air, and at one point plunged towards Earth, terrifying the crowds. With so many individuals having witnessed this unbelievable phenomenon, the Catholic Church was forced to acknowledge it. But when it came time to document the event, they would force it all through their pre-existing religious lens. The apparition was Mary, and despite all the testimony we have from highly credible individuals claiming they saw a silver disc, the Catholic Church would claim it was the sun which had moved around the sky. This is just a tiny snapshot of how the Catholic Church has approached strange phenomena throughout history, but it shows a reliable pattern. When you can hide the strange phenomenon, you hide it. And when you can't, you force it into one of two boxes, no matter how badly it fits into them. Either it is completely demonic and must be suppressed at all costs, or it's completely holy. And any data that doesn't fit into those pre-existing narratives will be trimmed from the story. You see, for the Catholic Church, this phenomena is ultimately just another revolution that needs to be constrained and managed in order to maintain their persistence as an institution and their power in the world. And so it's no wonder that they might gravitate towards a Collins elite style theory in order to discourage powerful people from investigating the topic and to try and maintain the status quo. And so it makes total sense that we would find a Catholic Jesuit university in the United States like Fordham propagating a Collins elite style narrative to try and discourage the powerful from investigating the UFO phenomenon, and other phenomena like it are demonic, and to encourage a culture of total secrecy. But there is just one piece of the puzzle left over that doesn't make any sense. How did the anti-revolutionary Catholic Church managed to get a significant foothold in the revolutionary American Republic? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at how the church managed to infiltrate the highest echelons of power in the United States government. In order to understand how Catholic power managed to get a significant foothold in the good old revolutionary American Republic, it's important that we understand the role of the Jesuits. Now, today isn't the day to have a vast deep dive into the order of the Jesuits. I really would love to do that one day, but now simply isn't the time. All we need to know is that the Jesuits were controversial. They were kicked out of many countries because of their operations, and at one point the Pope even had to ban the order entirely, only reinstating it after the Napoleonic Revolution, presumably in order to get some of that good old-fashioned Jesuit resistance to further revolutions. To get a sense of how the Founding Fathers felt about the Jesuits, it's instructive to read a letter that John Adams, one of the Founding Fathers and second President of the United States, would write to Thomas Jefferson. Here's Adams. I do not like the late resurrection of the Jesuits. They have a general, now in Russia, in correspondence with the Jesuits in the US, who are more numerous than everybody knows. Shall we not have swarms of them here, in as many shapes and disguises as ever a king of gypsies, Bamfield Moore Carew himself assumed, in the shape of printers, editors, writers, schoolmasters, and such. I have lately read Pascal's letters over again, and 4 volumes of the history of the Jesuits. If ever any congregation of men could merit eternal perdition on earth and in hell, it is this company of Loyola. Just for context here, Ignatius of Loyola was the founder of the Jesuits. And now back to Adams, who says something extremely important as a final note in his letter. Our system, however, of religious liberty must afford them an asylum. The Founding Fathers were very concerned about these old power groups like the Jesuits and the impact that they might have on the Republic. But true to their values, they still let them in and gave them freedom of religion. By 1900, the Jesuits had established 25 colleges in the United States, more than any other group, and this doesn't include non-Jesuit Catholic institutions. Think about the power that this gives you. With a flood of Irish Catholic immigrants coming to the United States, As these individuals rise up through the universities, you can identify those who are most devout to church and to Pope, and you can encourage them into particular positions, pushing them into the military, pushing them into defense and intelligence, or into high-powered offices in politics. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's pretty conspiratorial, right? I mean, really, could you prove that? Could you really give us the numbers and the receipts to show that that's what happened? Well, no. I can't take you into the back rooms of the people who may have whispered into each other's ears or may have engineered such a thing, but I can show you some astonishing facts about how Catholics and Irish Catholics would end up in significant positions of power and also would contribute massively to the United States military effort. In 2010, a census found that of 30 million Americans of Irish descent, an astonishing 10 million of them had served in the United States military at some point in their lives. That's 33%. No other demographic goes into the military quite like the Irish Americans. And in the same year, it was reported that of the 3,464 medals of honor awarded in US history, a staggering 2,000 of them were awarded to those of Irish descent. That's 58%. What is going on here? And it's not just that these Catholics were attending the Jesuit and Catholic universities that have been established. Take West Point Academy as an example. When Catholics first turned up on campus in the early 1900s, there was huge resistance to them building their own chapel. By 1985, Catholic cadets would outnumber their Protestant counterparts. And something absolutely fascinating is when you look at the stained glass windows inside of the Catholic chapel, you see references to very interesting groups, like the Knights of Malta.
Almost.
The astonishing thing is you don't even need to look at the late 20th century to see the power of Catholic influence in the highest defense institutions in the land. You can go all the way back to World War II and the Office of Strategic Services, which was run by Wild Bill Donovan and was staffed by individuals like James Jesus Angleton, Bill Casey, who would go on to become a future CIA director, and William Colby, another man who would go on to become a future CIA director. All four of the individuals I mentioned were devout Catholics and were Knights of Malta. Man. Arguably, in some cases, you can say that they deferred more to the Pope and the Church than they did to the country which employed them.
Dude, I don't know why my microphone was blocked actually. For the fuck? So I just said, oh my goodness, I just said that Malta is one hell of an interesting place and that there are very, very interesting sites, and that in case you haven't seen it, I can very much recommend you Project Unity, Jay Anderson, the channel. Like, he's been to Malta many times and did very, very interesting videos of like sites and, you know, cave systems, stuff like that. So yeah, man, archaeologically speaking, for many, many reasons, Malta is a very inspirational, interesting place. You can dig a lot into so much weird things going on there. Pretty much fun. So weird that my mic was blocked though. What the heck?
And so is it any wonder that during World War II and in the years afterwards, the revolutionary American Republic would end up in a strange, sordid relationship with the very Vatican, which it had dreaded so much. Some of this is due to the lingering spectre of communism, but it is undoubtable that the steady influence on American education and the elevation of these individuals into positions of critical power, like in this moment with the Office of Strategic Services, played a huge role in taking these two former antithetical powers and driving them together into a strange marriage indeed. And remember what founding fathers like John Adams had worried about so much. It was that their approach to the freedom of religion would allow individuals like the Jesuits to come in and to start affecting the education of the youth. Now, I want to be extremely clear here. I have no problem with Catholics. I have no problem with the Irish. It may surprise you to find out that I am half Irish. I have no problem with any of these people. What I want to point out today
I gotta close the window
is
for
not
a second, man. Those fucking trains are killing me, man. Give me 1 sec. For goddamn sake, why are you so loud, nigga? Come on, man. What you doing? You didn't hear me saying that. I did say nothing. I did say nothing.
Catholics are in government, or that they're serving in the military, or that they've won the Medal of Honor. These are things to be admired in a huge, huge way. What I want to point out is a tiny percentage of individuals who defer more to the Pope and the Church than they do to the country which employs them. And as we're going to see, that is exactly what we begin to find as the Reagan years develop and as we begin to look further into the future of America. Guys, we are nearly ready to get back to the Reagan administration. I hope you found that backdrop useful and illuminating. I think some of these details are going to be critical as we begin to try and understand the religious takeover of the UFO narrative. Now we can finally get back to what Valet was saying about Fordham University. This is what he says. The various threads of the Lone Stars have taken a strange turn. The Collins elite started in the 70s and originated at Fordham. An examination of that university's trustees from the late 60s gives an interesting mix. Many linked to senior intelligence officers, including some 4-stars, CIA directors, and Ambassador MacDonald. Now, today isn't a day to go deep into the Fordham Board of Trustees, but to give you a high-level view, what is absolutely fascinating is that there isn't simply Knights of Malta, Jesuits, and Catholic power brokers associated with that board, but there are also shadowy individuals connected to strange and mysterious organizations like the World Commerce Corporation and the Peter Grace Corporation as well. These two institutions have been deeply involved in the deep state, demonstrably, especially the World Commerce Corporation, which is truly fascinating as a private intelligence network which may have had a big hand in UFO secrecy.
Which we now know, since we watched that video about it, that is pretty much, well, could say, kind of linked to Nazis, right? And Otto Skorzeny and all those guys.
If you're interested in finding out more about the World Commerce Corporation and the secret non-state intelligence network that it may have been operating, subscribe to the channel. A huge future video is coming up on that topic. Finally, one last important point about the Fordham Board of Trustees is that it contained individuals who are about to appear in the Reagan administration. But just before we get there, we need to tie Fordham together with the other strands we have regarding the Collins elite, because now we have 3 different groups. We have the program, founded in 1952 from the Directorate of Plans, reporting into the Pentagon. We have the family network, which is across government as an informal, invisible, mafia-style network, which absolutely demonstrably has knowledge of the UFO issue. And now we have this Catholic network. So what's going on here? Well, first of all, it's not unreasonable to assume that the Catholic Church would propagate this type of theory anyway, independently. But there are compelling reasons to think that all of this may indeed be connected. Firstly, in Redfern's book, he documents how members of the Collins elite would go to Notre Dame, a Catholic university, in order to get a better understanding of demonology, to build their theory and thesis. This happened in 1972, and Notre Dame, of course, is a serious Catholic university. It's not impossible to imagine that the individual who briefed the Collins elite may have reported back up his or her chain of command, leading Catholic powers to become aware that people deep inside the defense and intelligence community were beginning to build this theory, something that they could potentially take advantage of. But there's an even more compelling connection that we can make. Although the Collins Elite project was formalized in the CIA Directorate of Plans in 1952, the original discussions were happening in the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. So, who was in charge of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations when it was founded in 1948? Well, it was Lieutenant General Francis Carroll. Carroll had attended the Jesuit University Loyola, where he was training to join the priesthood, but it wasn't long until he would be swept up into a completely different job description. He joined the FBI as an informant, and not long after that, he would become the maiden commander of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. A man deeply versed in Christian and Catholic theology was about to take over the very organization which was going to begin building the theory that would lead to the Collins Elite project. It's not out of the question that Catholic power was aware of this Collins Elite theory very early on, and they likely were very happy to see it flourishing. This is the power of getting devout Catholics into critical positions. It is not out of the question that Carroll may have acted as a conduit, communicating this emerging theory to key power brokers in the Catholic, Jesuit, and Knights of Malta communities, many of whom were connected to the very people who were orchestrating the UFO cover-up. More to come on that in the future video. So, I think we can meaningfully tie all of these different strands of Collins Elite together, the three different branches, the project itself, the Catholic influence spreading through various universities, and of course the Family International group. And we're going to find even more evidence of all of them getting along wonderfully in the Reagan administration. The Reagan administration had already acted as a huge connector for the family organization and the Collins Elite program, which had generated these new ideas about the UFO demonic hypothesis. Because the family is by nature a secret organization, we don't know quite how many of them were in the Reagan administration, but we do know the three that we've already mentioned. James Baker, Chief of Staff, William Rehnquist, who would be appointed Chief Justice, and General John William Vesey, who would be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And through the testimony of Redfern, we know that the Collins Elite were able to brief Reagan and Baker, and that Reagan really liked their theory and gave them more blank budget funding. But we still need to add the Catholic element to the mix, because one of the most astonishing things about the Reagan administration was how thoroughly it was packed full of Knights of Malta. First, there's William Casey, Reagan's director of the CIA, a Fordham alumni who had also been on the board of trustees. There was Alexander Haig, who would be Reagan's Secretary of State. Peter Grace, also from Fordham, also deeply connected to the deep state and also a Knight of Malta, would chair Reagan's private sector survey on cost control. Pat Buchanan, the White House communications director during the Reagan administration. Claire Booth Luce, senior Reagan foreign policy advisor. There was James Nicholson, who was part of the Reagan sphere, also a Knight of Malta, both of the Buckley brothers, William and James. There was Admiral James D. Watkins, who was Chief of Naval Operations and a Knight of Malta. The list goes on and on. Just like members of the Family and Fellowship group, the Knights of Malta don't go around telling everybody who they are. So we don't know the full extent of their influence into the Reagan administration. Clearly, they were willing and happy to work with a president who was an apocalyptic evangelical Christian and who had members of the evangelical family group in his administration. And frankly, given what we've learned about the sheer scope and scale of the Collins elite influence, is it any wonder? Because despite their doctrinal differences, all of these groups could work together when spreading this theory to maintain UFO secrecy. I know some of you might be thinking to yourselves, well, what does it really mean if someone's a Knight of Malta? And that is a brilliant question. The truth is, we don't really know, because there's no single document that tells you what you have to do. But let's use the example of Bill Casey. Casey, as CIA director, had an unusual amount of visits to go and see the Pope. According to high-end estimates, he may have visited as many as 29 times during his tenure as CIA director. When Casey would go and meet the Pope, we don't know exactly what it was that he was talking about, but we do know that he would kneel and kiss the Pope's ring. All of this indicates an individual who was a devout.
Maybe the Pope was doing some Dalai Lama shit.
Could you maybe suck on my tongue?
Dude. Just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, there's this video of the Dalai Lama where he has this little kid on his lap and he's just like getting close to that kid's mouth and saying like, suck my tongue. Like, what? Are you for real, brother? Did you just say that, bro? Live on camera? Did you forget that the cameras are on? Or is it like thrilling to you, brother?
Suck my tongue, little kid.
I mean, that's just what you want to say, right? Isn't it? Just say it.
Catholic and highly respected Pope and Church in a profound way. Now, in terms of the sorts of conversations Casey was having with the Pope, obviously we know at this time the end of the Cold War was in sight, and the alliance between the Vatican and powerful components of the US intelligence apparatus was key to the final blow to the Soviet Union. So of course that would have been up for discussion. But there were also other deeply fascinating elements of this era. Think about the Strategic Defense Initiative. Often described as Reagan's Star Wars project.
What if free people could live secure in the knowledge that their security did not rest upon the threat of instant U.S. retaliation to deter a Soviet attack, that we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies?
Many people have come out to talk about how the $29 billion spent on this project, which in today's money would be easily north of $100 billion, but it was also full of mystery. Many people would later say that the plan didn't work, that the technology didn't meet its objectives, and it seemed all a little bit mysterious and strange. 20 scientists associated with the project would mysteriously die.
Oh my god.
And many people would later come out blowing the whistle, claiming that the true purpose of the SDI initiative was in fact to build a vast defense system against UFOs.
Golden Dome,
a very interesting project for an eschatological president like Reagan, who presumably believed by this point that UFOs were part of a demonic horde ushering on the end times. Now, I know it may seem a little bit far out to imagine that a president would build a vast space-based defense system to try and hold off the final end times moment. But it's very interesting to compare this huge project up in space with another strange phenomenon going down on the surface of the Earth. And that was the Satanic Panic. In the 1980s and 90s, America became gripped by the Satanic Panic, a moral hysteria claiming hidden cults were abusing children in secret rituals beneath schools, daycares, and suburban neighborhoods. Therapists, police, and media amplified stories of underground tunnels, sacrifices, and occult networks. Now, we don't know how many of these stories were really true, but regardless, this kind of hysteria played right into the hands of the Collins elite networks. It stimulated a fear and panic about the occult and drove people further towards Christianity, and also created an environment where a sense of the end times was palpable. Isn't it interesting that during the presidency of the eschatological president, Ronald Reagan, surrounded by Knights of Malta and family members, briefed by the Collins elite, we see two things happening in tandem: a vast investment in a space-based defense system which is rumored to be used to protect against the UFO horde, and meanwhile a vast panic emerging on planet Earth, scaring the life into individuals who may previously have fiddled with the occult and driving them further towards the Christian belief system. This is all speculation, but I find those two details fascinating. Ultimately, the Reagan administration was also marked by a tightening of UFO information and more power being taken away from democratic oversight and shoveled into the deep state. Whatever Reagan's intentions were with these phenomena and these projects, there's one thing that's for sure: the religious powers were very comfortable with him. Ultimately, the Reagan administration is a story of how warring religious factions became happy to work together. Catholic powers and Protestant ones worked hand in hand to put a seal over UFO information. And as we press beyond the Reagan and Bush years into the early 90s, and we see Bill Clinton trying to get access to UFO information and failing, we also see this partnership between Catholics and evangelicals deepening. It was time for the family and the Knights of Malta to formalize their relationship. Thank you to Private Internet Access for supporting this channel and for making this video possible. And speaking about the video, let's get back to it. Guys, this is Jason Somoza from the future here, letting you know that we're actually going to have to park this episode here because it's becoming huge, and if we continue all the way to the end of the theme I had, this video will never come out. Suffice to say, I think what we've covered is a really useful part one, because we now see that the Collins Elite is just way more complicated than just being a network or a program. It's all of these things. But as we're going to see in part 3, the really astonishing stuff is still to come. We need to trace this into the Clinton years. We're going to be going back into Dr. Ronald Pandolfi and the astonishing ways he might be involved in the Collins Elite. Might be, but I've got a compelling theory there. We're going to be looking at Peter Thiel and his comments, J.D. Vance, and what this all means for Donald Trump, a president who is promising disclosure and information, but is it possible that he's surrounded by these same types of characters that we've been going over? Spoiler alert, there's a really good argument to be made there. And finally, we're going to get into a climax where we're going to talk about a secret plan, which I think needs to be talked about, to stage an end times event. There's enough anecdotal data from multiple sources that we should take this seriously. All of that is going to come up in our final part of this Collins Elite series. I can't wait to share it with you, but we do have to park part 2 here. Please do consider supporting the channel on Patreon or by becoming a member here on YouTube, because I've got some really exciting information. I'm going to be going full-time with the Jason Somoza channel. I have handed in my notice with my job. I've moved back to England into my house. I really want to do this full-time, and you know, those little bits of financial support help me to have more confidence as I go forward. But with all of that, all that's left to say is my name's Jason Somoza. This has been Jason Somoza's Ufology Moments, and until next time, cheers.
Goddamn, Jason Somoza, stop cooking so much. You be stirring that pot like... Bro. Again. Oh, so much value. Oh, I cannot comprehend the value in this video. No, but like seriously, dude. I can tell why you want to go full-time. Like, you read a lot of books to get all of that together, and this is what I appreciate, and this is why I'm doing this. To spread the information that Jason Somoza just gave us, man. So if you want to support his channel, man, please do so. I put it all his socials into the video description. Man. And this is what I mean, like, so many ties that make sense. And this is also what I feel like is happening. I haven't read all of these books, so I didn't even know about all these ties, right? I didn't know about the family. I haven't read the books from Jacques Vallée, so I didn't know about the Collins elite before I stumbled across the videos of Jason Somoza. And because this is all new, it is even kind of more confirming or pointing towards the direction that there's a weird thing going on with all these elites, and as he said, kind of pushing towards a certain thing. And we do know that Peter Thiel is one hell of a weird guy, talking a lot about the Antichrist and bringing this subject up, especially tied to religion as well, in a very strong, weird way. But also at the same time being this super intense, weird transhumanist, you know, all of this is super weird. And if you want to ask me, I think he's it is a weird thing combining religion, but then at the same time talking about all this kind of technology that would turn us basically into grace, you know, like changing the human biology to such an extent that we are not really humans anymore. And in a way you could, you know, play through in your mind and see where we would end up if we like disconnect from ourselves as we are right now. We would probably end up being grace, which is interesting again when we have guys like Philip Corso, or the son of Philip Corso, especially talking about UFOs, but like mainly being a time travel thing, right? That it's not about like UFOs, like he's saying like the UFO thing is pretty much a time travel thing that we are witnessing, which is why it's always so weird that they like, you know, they appear and then they go and then they blur in, and it's never really sharp footage we see. If you talk about like frequency, and then you get a lot again into like physics and how's the universe working, and it's all just frequencies, and time is an illusion, so we're like everything is there at the same time pretty much. We're just tuning into different frequencies and just making things visible. So in a way there's no real future and past, you know, it's all there at the same time. You can just like step in, you can bring certain moments into the present, kind of in terms of like making it visible, but it's always there, you know. So like time traveling in a way, it's not really time traveling, which is making things even more weird, man. But could make sense why it's like always been there. And it's so weird that we see old civilizations talking about all the same things. Man, I love this. I love it. I love it. And because I love it, I want to share it with you. So again, support Jason Somoza's channel, guys. And I hope you did enjoy the second part as much as I did. We're gonna follow up on the third part, of course, because I feel like this is gonna be super, super good. As I said to you as well, I'm gonna be working on a video in the background. I'll let you know when it comes out though. So you better stay tuned to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss on anything. And guys, I hope you have a good week. Stay relaxed, man. Stay calm. And because we have, you know, there's enough hate in this world already. So I feel like let's just have a good time, support each other. Don't be too, you know, don't get caught up in your ego, and like just have a good time in this world, man. It's all about looking for the good things in life, you know. There's too much negativity going on right now, I feel like, and it's pretty important to keep up the good vibes in a healthy way, you know. So guys, have a good Monday. I appreciate you for spending your time with me and watching that thing. Good thing. I see you in the next live stream, and have a good time with your loved ones. Have a good time with your loved ones. And I see you in the next one, guys. I'm out.